There you go. We'll wrap up with the Tennessee Vols baseball team. Ryan, you're pretty plugged in here. When you saw that Tennessee was not hosting over the weekend in the Super Regionals against the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, what was your immediate thought, and what can you speak to when it comes to why Tennessee is not hosting?
Yeah, so I mean, when the announcement came out Tuesday, I wasn't surprised. Just from talking to some people around the program on Monday, there was not, no one said there's no chance, but there was not a lot of optimism that they were going to host. They thought they were going to have to go on the road. So that's kind of how I thought about it. I was obviously very depressed. Southern Mississippi in the middle of June, 7 hours. I mean, it's an act of terrorism from the NCAA to do it to me. So, as to why, I think there's really two things you can point to here. I think the first one, and they list their main parameters being like being able to host, having a stadium and hotel rooms, and both teams can do that. About 1,000 more seats at Pete Taylor Field. I think they wanted the money of being able to sell 2,000, 3,000 more tickets over the course of 3 days. And I do think there was a little bit of politics that went into it as well, where there's some connections on the selection committee to the Southern Miss program. And I'm going blank on their coach's name right now, but obviously he's in his last season. I don't necessarily think Tony Vitello is the most well-liked guy across the college baseball spectrum. Real hot take from me there. But I think those sort of things that kind of went into it, because when you look at resume, certainly there wasn't some massive divide between the two teams, but anything you look at, Tennessee had the better resume. I mean, every category besides wins, when Southern Miss had, I think, 4 or 5 more wins playing in the Sun Belt. So RPI, which has been the king for every decision they've made, strength of schedule, more impressive regional win, more quality wins. Tennessee's got all of it. So I think it went to the money for being able to sell more tickets, and then maybe a little bit of politics mixed in there as well.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I wonder, do you think it's something that Tennessee, it's going to end up being a positive, Ethan, that they have to go on the road, that they can play kind of ticked off because of what just happened, and they thought they were going to be able to host, and they look at it as they are the better team by just about every metric, that they are a better baseball team than Southern Miss at this point in time. Like, can you spin it for a positive that it's actually good that Tennessee will not take Southern Miss lightly because they have to travel and they're going to just play ticked off all weekend?
It can be spun as a positive. It's definitely not a positive. I mean, especially, you'll want, I get what you're saying. It can definitely be spun as a positive. I mean, if you want to play the black jerseys thing, and if you look good, you feel good thing. If you want to play the Tony can say you guys were disrespected and all that, even though Ryan's 100% correct that it's just because of money. And that's how the world spins. It's what keeps things going is money. Every single decision is going to be made by money. And I feel like Tennessee versus Southern Miss. Anyone in their right mind, if they weren't even talking about baseball, would pick Tennessee in that aspect. You can definitely spin it into a positive, though. I mean, Tennessee has played better on the road as of extremely late. They did not play well during the season on the road, but they went and they beat South Carolina on the road to end the season. They just outlasted a really tough regional in Clemson, which is obviously on the road. And, there's nothing showing that they're going to revert back to midseason Vols and just all of a sudden be terrible. But then again, that's what you said last year against Notre Dame. Not necessarily the road Vols, but just that they'll overlook them, I guess, is also a possibility, that Southern Miss is the team that's not as difficult as Clemson. And for Tennessee to revert back to their midseason form would be very Tennessee. But I don't necessarily think it's a good or bad thing. I think there's ways that Tony Vitello can amp up his team to still be able to beat what is, by all metrics, as we've already discussed, an inferior team as of right now, as of how they're playing right now. Especially Tennessee has played really good baseball. They just knocked off a team that won, I think, 17 in a row in Clemson. And I mean, they were going to do it again, very likely, if Charlotte hadn't beaten them, because they're tired. And so Tennessee's playing great baseball right now. Southern Miss is also playing great baseball right now, but I don't necessarily think it being in Hattiesburg is going to be the impending doom for Tennessee, I guess, if that's your question.
3:00 on Friday. I'm just going to be, I guess it'd be 2:00 local time. I'm going to be smashing 2 vitamin waters together, Stone Cold style, and just getting ready to go for this, because I want to just throttle. I was so annoyed, and I told my wife, I'm like sweating how annoyed that I'm not going to be able to go to a super regional at home this weekend. Like, I am so annoyed that I need it to be embarrassing. I want it to be full on Jordan Beck flicking off the outfield as he's rounding the bases. I want this to be the old time FU to the NCAA. And unfortunately, Southern Miss is going to have to take the beating here for hosting in this regard. Ryan, I just, because I'm not a capital J journalist when it comes to Tennessee, I can do this. You can't, but in spirit, I hope that you feel the same for having to make this 14-hour round trip over the weekend, because I just hope it's a bloodbath. I really do. I hope they just absolutely throttle Southern Miss in 2 games.
Well, the thought of it being 2 games and only having to spend one night in Hattiesburg is an unbelievable win. And that's honestly my prediction. Like, it's baseball, so I wouldn't be shocked if things go otherwise. But Tennessee is just playing really well right now, and everything they struggled with all last season, or not all last season, all this season, regular season, they did so well in the Clemson regional. I mean, the defense was fantastic. There were games where they did not hit well early, and they stuck with it, and they were able to grind out some runs and stay in the game against Clemson. And then in the Charlotte game 3, they didn't come out firing, but they stuck with it. And then the crazy one, Tony Vitello pitching decisions, has not gone Tennessee's way this season. And by goodness, with Chase Burns, I thought he made 6 different mistakes. He joked afterwards at his own dad. So the first thing he said to him was, "Boy, would I have managed that game differently." But the decisions worked out. So all those things that Tennessee struggled with seem to have gone well for them. And Southern Miss is certainly a good team. I don't want to say they're not, but I think Tennessee's more talented. I think the depth and number of arms Tennessee's going to be able to throw at Southern Miss is going to be unlike anything they've seen all season. And you look at Tanner Hall, who's really the star of that Southern Miss team on the mound. He threw 151 pitches last weekend. I'm sure he'll be good. I'm sure he'll be able to throw a good outing, but that's a lot to turn around and be really effective in that type of workload in the weekend and then go do it again a second weekend. Kevin Kopps is the only guy I've ever seen do it. So maybe Tanner Hall has got that Kevin Kopps in him. But
against an SEC program of all things, too. I mean, they've only played a couple Power 5 programs. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, that's correct. They have dropped 2 out of 3 to Illinois in the regular season. They lost midweeks to Alabama and the Mississippi schools, and obviously they beat Auburn last week in that regional. So they haven't been fantastic there. I don't, buy too much into that just because those midweek games are kind of wonky with who you're pitching. But yeah, they haven't had a ton of experience there. And then the last thing I'd say, they use about 7 arms pretty heavily. Only 2 of those guys lefties, and they're kind of down the list. So obviously Tennessee got the kitchen sink of lefties thrown at them last week at Clemson. They'll get a little bit easier task against right-handed pitching this weekend.
There you go. Ethan Stone, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Saturday Down South this week?
Yes, the Supers kick off. We'll have full coverage of all the Big 4, ACC, Pac-12, Big 10, and SEC. Those are the sites that we cover. So any of those teams in the Supers, will be covering them. Also covering the Women's College World Series, Florida State and Oklahoma. Florida State has no chance. Oklahoma is generational, absolute juggernaut. Wish Tennessee could have gotten there. That would have been fun, but we've been covering that all weekend, and we'll continue to moving into the future.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, what about you and the team?